Hello, gorgeous people. How are you diddling? Today I'm talking about concepts versus reality. I'll tell you all about it on the other side. So I'm currently listening to Awareness by Anthony DeMello for about the 50th time. Every time I listen to it, I hear something new. But what he was talking about was the difference between having a concept and actually seeing reality, or seeing a concept and seeing reality. Let me explain what I mean. So they say that children actually see reality before they get a name for it. So a little child can look at something, an elephant, imagine. What they see is not what we see. They see something, and they see it in its entirety because they have no name for it. They have no concept of what it could be. And then we as parents or whoever, we say, "That's an elephant, son." And so what happens is they suddenly now have a concept. And so they stop seeing the elephant, and what they see is the concept of the elephant. And therefore you can get lots and lots of different elephants, and the child will go, "Well, that's an elephant, and that's an elephant," okay? We stop looking. But if a child doesn't have a concept, it can see an elephant, and then you can show it another elephant, and it'll be thinking, "Well, that's completely different." Okay? So when we get a concept, when we get a name, a label, if you want to call it that, we get a label, it makes us blind. And what happens with children? They are passionate about learning, or they're not. They want to know. I remember having my son in my arms, and he was just going, "What's that? And what's that?" And of course, like a good father, I was giving him all the labels for the things. And then after a while, he stopped. He wasn't interested in learning all the names. Why? Because he had all of the labels. And what happens with us, when we get a concept, it's boring. Then it's boring because we stop seeing, right? Clearly, imagine if you go through your life without ever creating a concept. You're going to spend your life like this. "Oh my God, what's that? Oh my God." That wouldn't be good either. And so we have to go through that process. But it's a process of loss as well. You could call it the loss of innocence, the loss of sight, the loss of understanding. And so that's why, for example, I could say, if you had said this to me about 20 years ago, if you had said, "Well, he's American," okay? American. I would instantly project onto that an understanding. 20 years ago, I didn't understand Americans. I didn't hold them in very high esteem. Why? Because what I was aware of was that America, and it's not the Americans, by the way, the establishment seemed to be doing horrible things. And so I projected onto all Americans this, like, "Oh, there they are. Who do they think they are, going around the world killing loads of people?" Now that I've met loads of Americans, and we have lots of Americans who come on our course, they are the most generous people. They are friendly, they're lovely, they're enthusiastic, they've got tons of energy. I really admire them. But listen, I'm giving you a concept. I am saying Americans are generous people. There's 350 million of them. I can only talk about the handful of Americans that I've met. And so I'm coming from a place of concept. It's not the truth. And so what we've got to understand is that the concepts we hold have absolutely fuck all to do with the truth. They really aren't linked at all. The only thing a concept can do is tell you what it isn't. And I'll give you an example. So imagine I say to you, "This morning I saw a leaf on the ground." Right? Now I'm giving you a concept, a leaf. The only thing that you know about what I'm telling you is that it wasn't a guitar, it wasn't a car, you only know what it wasn't, but you don't know from what I'm telling you what it was. You only understand the concept of it. It's a leaf. It's like saying he's awake or she's awake. that doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you what that person isn't. That means that they're not asleep to some things, but even then we don't know. And so what we've got to be careful of is that when we get tied into a concept, we are in prison because we can't see the truth. We've got no access to the truth. It's only a way of knowing what something isn't. Okay? That's the concept. So there's this kind of idea which is, and it's based on the hero's journey. So we start off on our journey and we've got our eyes wide open and we are soaking in everything. And then as we go through our hero's journey, we build all of these concepts and life becomes a bit shit. It's like we're just a life of concepts. There's nothing fresh, nothing new, nothing like that. And then through this process that we go through of battles and learning these really hard lessons, what happens if we're lucky is that we die to ourselves. And I think that's really coming from the Bible, you know, and from lots and lots and lots of gurus and maestros and Sufis who say that you've got to die to yourself. But what does that mean? That's not real. You're not really dying, but it's the death of the concept. And so what happens is we get to the other side where we start seeing things through childlike eyes again. You know, I think Jesus said that children enter into the kingdom of God the easiest because they're not carrying any of these horrible concepts. They're just innocent. And it's the innocence of not knowing what it is that they're seeing and therefore not projecting onto it. Yeah? So that brings me to the idea of God. And whatever word you use to describe that higher power, when we say God or whatever, the universe, higher power, the architect, instantly we're trapped inside of a concept because we have no idea what God is. The word God only tells us what it isn't. We only know what it isn't. It isn't a house. But the word God tells us nothing at all. Absolutely nothing at all. We don't know. We don't know anything about what God is. And as long as we understand that, you know, I think the ego, the job of the ego is to make us think that we know everything. We know. Don't come here. I know what's going on. The ego loves that. And the death of the ego, this dying to oneself, is understanding that we don't know shit. We don't know shit. And I know I had that experience. I've talked about it before. I had such an intense experience when I was on an ayahuasca retreat that when I came back, I was just relieved to be alive. I was really, I thought, just being alive is enough. But I'd lost all of this fear, and fear, this fear around concepts. Losing concepts makes us very frightened. Imagine that you had to lose your concept of what you thought God was. Imagine you had to lose your concept of what you thought love was, or ascension, or whatever. And it's the same with people who wake up. And we are still in this process of waking up. You wake up and you have to drop your illusions. You have to drop the illusions. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. The secret to actually living and seeing through the eyes of a child is exactly that. You've got to remind yourself all of the time that you don't know anything. That you don't know anything. You know that expression, he who knows doesn't say, he who says doesn't know. Does that mean that we've got to go through life in ignorance? Are we got to say, I don't know anything, so there's no point? No. That's not the case. There's knowing through not knowing. When you say, I don't know, boy, you get loads more information. When you say, well, I've heard tell that that's an elephant, but hey, let me have a look because I could be wrong. Maybe I've been given wrong information. Maybe I've understood it wrongly. Suddenly you'll start seeing more. The doors of perception open. And it's when we stick rigidly to our concepts that we stop seeing. So what happens is when we realize, when we say, what I'm seeing isn't the truth. And what I'm understanding isn't the truth. It's just what I'm grasping with the very limited ability that I have to grasp stuff. Then suddenly our whole perception is amplified and we get lots of perspective. Okay? And there's an interesting story about a mosquito that's flying over a puddle of donkey piss. Okay? And it's flying over this massive puddle of donkey piss. And it looks down and goes, wow, that's the ocean. That's the ocean. And there was a bit of straw floating. And it said, and look, there's a boat. I've always wanted to have a boat. And so the mosquito lands on the boat, which is just a bit of straw. And it looks out to this vast ocean of donkey piss. Has no idea that it's donkey piss. And then the wind blows and it blows the straw forward, and the mosquito says, what a sea captain I am. Look at what I'm in command of. And that's probably where we are. We are floating on a sea of donkey piss. Metaphorically, okay? Metaphorically. Sometimes possibly as well, depends on where you are. But it's metaphorical. What we think is everything, we have no idea because we have no perspective. And the perspective that we need will come later, I believe. And it'll come also, we'll get more perspective when we leave this plane and we get to the other side and go, oh my God, that's right. That was just a puddle of donkey piss. Yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was. So that's all that we've got to do is keep reminding ourselves that we don't know shit. And it's a hard job, because you've got to formulate ideas, but as long as behind your ideas there's a little line says, remember, you don't know shit, but hey, I'll hang on to this idea for the moment until something better comes along. Man, that just opens up everything for you. Okay, so here we go, sailing on our little bit of straw on a puddle of donkey piss and thinking that it's the ocean. I love you all, and I'll speak to you all later. Bye bye.